Textured under eyes. Today, we're going to talk about how to get under eye coverage without increasing the look of texture under your eyes. So welcome everybody. My name is Sami George, and I teach natural looking makeup to those women who have imperfect skin, just like me. So if you like simple but effective beauty tips, this is the place for you. I'm a teacher by heart, so I like to teach. I don't just show you, because I want you to take what you learn from me and extrapolate it to how it is applicable to you. So follow the concepts here and let me know after you watch this video, when you try some of these little under eye tricks, let me know if it works for you. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm real close to the camera, so it already feels a little bit awkward. So welcome to the very, very closeness to my face here. Hey girl, what's up? We are going to talk about spot treating our under eyes to get good coverage, a little bit of brightness, but not to increase our texture. Because traditionally, if you did your makeup with any sort of large concealer under the eye and you were in your 20s, it probably worked fabulously because you thought you had darkness, but you had no idea what darkness was, and you thought you had texture, but that has turned out to indeed be untrue compared to life right now, right? So the first thing we need to do is get rid of the old mindset of putting a light and bright under eye with a thick concealer. Little tip for you. Sorry, I need to put this on my lips here. Anything that is light is going to come forward. In 3D foundation world, the reason that we contour is because we are creating dimension with recession. Dark recedes. So if we want our cheekbones to look more sculpted, our jawline to look thinner, we put darkness there to help it recede. We brighten the center of the face so that when someone looks at you, the first thing that pops out is the center of your face because light comes forward. Same concept with hooded eyes and all the things. Darkness recedes, light comes forward. So if you go to your under eye where you have this darkness and you think, okay, in order to cover that, I'm just going to put something very bright, like I was taught, a concealer, and I'm going to put it very heavy because I have to put it heavy to cover the darkness, and then we'll be good. Well, guess what? Because light comes forward, the texture where you put that light product is like screaming at you. Now, is it an easy fix? It really is. It just takes a little bit of a different mindset. And all you need to do is think, pinpoint, target the areas of darkness and remove them with the least amount of product. A lot of makeup equals a lot of texture. A little bit of makeup equals a little bit of texture, because contrary to what you may have heard, makeup is not going to get rid of your texture. But there are certainly strategies that will decrease the look of the makeup texture and strategies that will increase the look of the makeup texture. So let me give you, as much as it pains me to tug on my eye, because I was doing this yesterday, I'm going to show you. If I were to take my traditional, let me find a different brightener here so you can actually see what I'm doing. If I were to take my traditional brightener, you guys should see my little setup here. We got a whole lot going on. Hi, how are you? Okay, and I was to take a large dense brush like this. And I am going to put it here. I'm going to put it out here. And then if we're even a little bit younger, we come under here and we create, now granted the rest of my face isn't done, so it looks crazier than it traditionally would, but we create this V, okay? Now, is my under eye brighter? Yes. Would I dab this out a little bit? Of course. But for the sake of showing you, look at the texture on my eye. I got just as much over here, but why don't I see it like that? Because I'm not emphasizing it with a ton of makeup that is bright, that shoots that texture to look forward. So here's the trick for you. I did this in my reel today, and it's super simple. Instead of that big brush that is super dense and is going to pick up a ton of product, instead of going right in to that whole under eye area with a brightener, I want you to grab a small brush and I want you to pick up a color correcting shade. If you've been matched by your artist to a color corrector, that's the shade. If you are a demi user, go for it with demi. This is probably an 01 or an 03 sort of deal. And all I want you to do is use the smallest amount of makeup. I haven't even tapped back in yet. I'm getting all of this off the brush. And I want you to pinpoint the darkness that is bothersome to you, and only that. Traditionally, when we're in a hurry and we color correct real quick, we might take our color corrector and, swipe it under the entire eye, and that's fine. It is going to give you a more textured look, especially if you do not use the perfector sponge. Less is always more. And the way to get that less is more is either to apply less or to be really strategic about using your perfector to remove excess. So all I'm doing is pinpoint, okay, the areas where you see that excess saturation. And you can think of your color corrector shade as a camouflage shade. What do you want to camouflage? We don't need to camouflage the whole under eye. We need to maybe you have a lot of the under eye, but you don't have to camouflage all of it. So you see this darkness right here? Does it look crazy because I'm looking at myself like big eyes in the camera? Oh, some things are just more uncomfortable than others. And now I'm using the light and fluffy end to just feather that out. Come in here a little bit where I still see some of that excess color. And even, obviously this is bright, but like right now, the difference is so drastic. And before you start your makeup, give yourself 20 minutes to let a silicone-free moisturizer sit into those areas of texture. That's gonna help. Keeping it hydrated, first of all, is going to help. All right, so I have this scar here. We'll just do this whole area. And just the smallest amount, because obviously I have texture there too, versus how much this texture is showing here. And if you have a little bit of a bigger area and you want to pick up that light and fluffy end, like this sunspot right here. Same thing with acne, this end. Acne is typically a highly textured part of the skin. And now I'm good. And you probably can't tell the difference, but my under eye was the same color as my eyelids when I started. So just that little bit of spot treatment on that area with a color corrector toned all of that down. So already, like in general, I'm like pretty much good to go. If I want to add a little bit of brightener, the easiest way to do that is either again with that brush, and I would use the fluffy end, or with the warmth of your finger. Don't use your pointer finger. We're just like, this is our like main digit that we're more aggressive with. Use your middle finger or your ring finger. It's going to force you, because it's not as natural, to be even a little bit more light-handed. So I'm starting with this much brightener. And now instead of going in, hi friend, instead of going in right here where I have all that texture, I am going to dab right next to it and right underneath it. And all I'm going to do is lighten this up just a little bit. I would say in my estimation, the day of the super, super bright under eye being like the absolute go-to, it's kind of gone. Like skin is in. Even with our young superstars. Now I'm just adding a little bit of brightener. If you guys have any questions, feel free. This is my lightest shade. It's almost gone. I need to melt it down. So I'm taking a little bit on the outside here, and I have texture here too, see? But the difference is gonna be that it's not going to, the light's not gonna reflect it in the same way. I want to tap on this. Hi, how are you? I'm going to tap on this sunspot here. And now I'm just going to use the warmth of my finger and what is left to blend this together. And here's a little saying that's true. If it blends, it extends. So with cream makeup, it is a blendable product. It's going to extend over the surface area of your face. So whatever you grab, if you grab like this much and put it here, you can blend that whole amount into a much larger area. And if you don't blend it, it's going to start to extend on its own. So remember that. Less is more, because if it blends, it extends. So I've taken care of the darkness under the eye. I'm adding a pop of brightness around where I have this bag here. And then you can decide. Do you want to get a little bit closer up underneath to the under eye? I have less texture right here, so I'll add a little bit right there. Or you can go with a little bit of a lighter brightener and still use a teeny tiny amount of product, just with something that has a little bit more light to it. So there's our difference in what the light and bright under eye, kind of the traditional concealer method looks like, and how to kind of conceal with the goal of getting rid of the darkness, adding a little bit of light to the center of the face, but not having all of that texture like screaming back at you. If you're somebody that has a is finger better than brush, it's totally up to you. A small brush or your finger, I would say, are equal. I find to have more control with my finger, I've gotten used to the brush. A small brush of your finger is better than a large brush, just because you can be more strategic with where you put it, and then you're not like, oh, I got it too high and trying to move things around. That would be my opinion. Let me show you, if you're used to color correcting a large area. Let me wipe the shenanigans off here, okay? With your color corrector, and you like that method, you feel like you have a lot of saturation, this will still get rid of the saturation, I promise. It just, you have to learn something new. So if you're used to doing it, we'll call it the traditional way that I teach. Not the concealer right on the face way, but let me grab a smaller brush. Like, let's say you're used to doing it with a small brush, hitting this pocket. And here's where I think a lot of people, even when they're using this method, I don't want to say go wrong, but end up increasing the texture anyways, because they're getting so much product on the brush that when they place it, it looks orange. If it looks orange, you have too much. It is orange, but it's meant to be used in such a small amount. That's the color science behind it. Let the color do its work. You don't have to put a ton on to get good coverage. You can still be light-handed. We can still add even more coverage with our main shade as long as we're light-handed. See how this redness has already died down? Sometimes under eyes are a little bit tricky on camera because I don't really know what translates. Sometimes I watch the videos back and I'm like, I can't even see what you're doing, talking to myself. But I'm still, even when I'm doing this method, I'm only putting the color where I see excess color on my face. For me, it's always right here. It's on the sunspot. I have redness or rosacea out here. I have this scar on the side of my nose. I'm not taking the color and swiping it everywhere. It's just unnecessary product. And then it starts to sit in the fine lines and wrinkles more than it sits over here. So I'm going to show you quickly. Grab the brush. Again, try the spot brush. Try a small brush, even if you have a different makeup brush at home. Go right onto your discoloration. Now, if you have a darker under eye than I do, you might like this. Okay, let me get rid of my darkness. Get rid of this sunspot. It's almost like a feathery touch. It's so soft. It is not heavy-handed. Hi, friend, how are you? All right, so discoloration is gone. If you want more coverage, now you can tap your main shade, and I'm talking like feathering on. And now I'm only going to tap, 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 tap. And I'm just going so light-handed. My first shade was Mango. This right here, Mango is my color corrector. So yes, I was. This shade right here is this is Athens. This is my traditional shade. And I want to show you, even though I'm being so light-handed, it's still increasing the texture because it's lighter. So what we're going to do at the end is we're going to be sure to use our perfector to remove any excess. And then we can set the under eye. Why would you choose one over the other? If you have a really, really, really dark under eye and you feel like when you spot treat, it still has a lot of excess color. One, we can talk about layering your color correctors. For really, really deep excess in certain skin tones, a light layer of our papaya shade with Mango on top is going to zap that for you. It's always the depth of color that I'm looking at when I'm color matching somebody. And I know it's a hard concept because, let's face it, none of us knew it. I only learned it when I decided to do this. But we're looking at how deep is the saturation. That's where somebody might really like Demi, because Demi literally goes in saturation levels. 01 is to cover up an under eye that's light but has some darkness. 03 is going to cover an under eye where that darkness is more saturated. So we can work one-on-one to figure out what shades, or you can try this layering method in the lightest application possible and use your perfector. Now, I put on my color corrector. I put on a little bit of my main shade. I'm going to take the fluffy end of my brush. I need to get my shade here that I don't have to dig into the corner. And I'm just putting, like, you can probably barely see the product. And I'm going to add this for brightness. A little bit on the outside. This is the same exact thing you can do with your finger. Same thing. Neither of these is right or wrong. Both will decrease the look of texture compared to just going right in with your brightening highlight, or going in with this layering method with a heavy hand will increase texture. So as long as you're light-handed and you're strategic with where you put your colors, your outcome is always going to be better than just the traditional concealer method. Same concept with acne. Even something like between your brows. For the longest time, I had scars from acne here, and I have lots of texture here. So I would go in with my like brightening shade as I was doing my T-zone, and it would just like scream out at me. It's the same concept anywhere that you have that texture. And now both under eyes, the color corrector has done its job. This one I have a little bit more coverage because I added my main shade, but I did it in such a light fashion that it's not going to give me that same increased look of texture. Like, I still have texture under my eyes. That's not going away, unfortunately. But my goal is for this not to sit in that and not to emphasize it. If I were to sit back like this far, you'd see very little texture. So do yourself that grace as well. Don't always be looking at yourself so close that you're like, oh my gosh, there's just so much texture. Right? It probably ain't going anywhere, and that's okay. I like to think of my, what is she called? Not my dermatologist. My esthetician was like, you have very strong smile lines. And I was like, yes, I do. I don't know. Maybe I smile a lot. Maybe I frown. I don't know. But like, they're not going anywhere, right? Give yourself grace. Like, maybe you didn't drink enough water yesterday. Lord knows the only water that I take most days is what comes in my coffee. And I'm trying to be better. Here's the other thing that you can do, and I will leave you with this. You can set your under eye. So right now, cream makeup is mobile. It doesn't set. It's going to move with our face. The beauty of that is it's not going to start to like crack and crunch in these lines because it doesn't evaporate. Liquid and powder evaporate the water and you're left with the pigment. This acts as a second skin, holding in the moisture, which overall helps with things like hydrated versus dehydrated under eyes. However, if you don't like a lot of movement, or you want to keep that makeup from moving almost in its entirety, you can set the under eye. There's a million different products that you can set with. You can also set with a setting spray if you like more of a glowing look. The benefit of something that is a translucent setting powder is, remember that light reflection that makes your texture stand out? This mattifies that a little bit. So it sets it and it mattifies it. I like our Vanilla Dust setting spray. It sits right in, obviously, our palette. I need to put mine back in. I like this loose powder from Unique. It's called Touch Behold. I have one from NARS. There are several that are really good. I like to always keep one in my palette. You guys, I'm a mess over here with my brushes. I was just filming a brush video for YouTube, and now I can't find any of the ones that, oh, here we go. Okay, so if you want to set your under eye, do it before it starts to migrate. You're gorgeous. Do it before it starts to migrate. As it moves, it's always going to find the lowest point. Like, makeup in general is going to find the low point. Cream is better than others because of the mobility of it, but this is not perfect. So tap it out. Make sure you have no creasing in your under eye area. Then set it instead of setting it into the creases. And all you want to do under your eye is the smallest amount, like one press. And I don't even start right here because wherever I start first, that's where I'm going to distribute the majority of the product that was on the brush. So I'm going to go to my least textured area, which is like right this teeny tiny spot right here. Then I make my way out, and then I'm going to go under again with what's left. And do you see how there's just a little bit less light reflection there? It'll take it down a notch for you. So let's tap. Make sure nothing has settled. Oh, I did not perfect over here. I almost broke my own rule. Perfect when you layer. Your perfector removes the excess that comes with layering without removing coverage, as long as your perfector is not soaking wet. If it's soaking wet, it will take off your coverage. You want it to be damp and cool, but not wet. Now, I already pressed it on here once, so I'm not going to do it again. Make sure no creases. Outside, working my way in. I have to do this face to get all my wrinkles unwrinkled. And there we go. We mattify it a little bit so everything looks a little bit less reflective. It's not going to show as much texture. It's going to set it. You can do it in these areas, but I don't have any makeup there. So that, my friends, is how to give the least amount of texture increase on your under eyes. There's lots more strategies and things you can do, but at its core, this is where I would start. Less is more. Pinpoint application with your color corrector or your demi, and then decide. If you're using the teeny tiniest amount of your color corrector, you don't really need anything on top of it unless you want more coverage. But you shouldn't see orange. If you see orange or whatever your color corrector is, you have too much on. It should be that light-handed when you're spot treating in those areas. And then from there, add a little bit of brightener below the hollows. You see how I have this pocket here? Come below and on the side of the nose, a little bit on the outside, and then just let it marry together with the warmth of your finger, and then you can set it if you like. If you guys found this helpful, let me know. If you want more videos on things like textured under eyes, pores, anything like that, whatever is on the back of your mind, using these tips to spice myself up for Annie tonight on a girls' night out. Oh, I love it. Are you going with Madison? You have to let me know. But thank you guys so much for joining me and for your questions, and I appreciate you being here, and I'll be back soon.